So, as you all probably gathered from the title, I'm in the reserves. To be precise, I'm a private in the Pilbara Regiment of Western Australia, normally stationed at Taylor Barracks. I'm sure most of you know what reserves are, but just in case anyone is unclear, we're a combination of regiments and support battalions whose main purpose is to remain in our own country for the purpose of home front defense, or alternatively, be sent overseas when personnel abroad becomes scarce. Essentially, we're backups. Now, that means we aren't quite as hardcore as your full-time soldiers, but we nevertheless are expected to maintain a high level of physical fitness. To test this aptitude, we're regularly sent to various locations that mimic the environments and situations we may find ourselves in. My regiment, Pilbara, has been taking part in a training exercise in a small camp on the border of southern and western Australia. It's pretty much in the middle of fucking nowhere. Not only is it one of the most isolated locations you could find, it's also one of the most extreme environments on the planet, for one reason alone: heat. A dry, arid heat that rivals, if not surpasses, most other desert ecosystems. My point is, it was a shitty place to be stationed. So enough backstory, I should get to the main reason for this. My day had remained pretty unremarkable for the most part, save for an uncommon exercise given by our officers. Squads of 6 had each been dropped off at random locations in the wilderness, with the aim of mastering our communication systems to find each other. It took us about an hour to find the second squad that had been dropped off, and now we were after the third and fourth. This was proving a little more difficult than we anticipated, and given the environment was dirt and brambles for miles, there weren't many landmarks to work off of. Now, here's where things start to get a little odd. We're trekking through this wasteland trying to make sense of the garbled crap coming out of the other end of our radios, and there's nothing at all in the distance except for the blurry heat reflections off the ground. I was getting more pissed off by the second, but my hopes were lifted when one of the women in the squad calls out to the rest of us. She'd seen someone, and within seconds, the rest of us did too. There was no question, it wasn't a mirage. There was another person nearby. We couldn't make out exactly who it was, though our immediate thought was that we'd finally stumbled across someone from another squad. We made it clear over the comms that we had a visual on their company, requesting confirmation, but none came. No one had any sights on us, and whoever was casting the heat-distorted figure in the distance was making no move to signal us. We requested that they double-check, even going as far as to wave to the guy. No response. Eventually, we determined this must be a civilian and moved to escort them from the area given a military exercise is taking place. We head off towards them, but they make no move to come closer. As the distance closes between us, the heat distortion starts to fade. Before long, we can make out a few features. It hits us immediately once we see the exposed dark skin. He was indigenous. We'd likely stumbled too close to an Angara community, and this guy was checking us out. We tried to appear as peaceful as possible, letting our weapons hang by our sides and raising a hand. But something was off. From the distance, the guy had appeared as little more than a sliver of black, like the distortion had slimmed him down. And yet, the closer we got, the more obvious it became that this was no illusion. Less than 50 meters away, it was clear this wasn't a normal guy. He was deformed. Somehow, he was without a doubt the skinniest human being I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen anorexics with more meat on their bones than this guy, and his height, Jesus Christ, this man was a giant. I'm talking like a good 7 feet, and with almost nothing between his skin and his bones. He wasn't wearing anything, apart from a few wrappings of what looked like flat leaves around his arms. It wasn't hard to tell everybody was uncomfortable, but no one was willing to admit they'd been spooked by an unarmed and clearly unhealthy aboriginal. I stopped, reluctant to get any closer, and called out to him. I asked if he spoke English. No response, just his creepy fucking stare. Words weren't going to work. We needed to find some way to communicate. We figured we could draw something, but the moment we took another step towards him, he flipped the fuck out. First, there was the head, a sudden jerking twist to the side. It was like how a puppy looks at a toy with curiosity. His head hung sideways, eyeing us up, measuring us. Then came the cry. This shrill, progressive build-up from guttural to shrieking. You can see the pink of his mouth as he screeches before shaking his head violently. Then he turned. But not really a turn, it was more of a twist. His legs remained stationary, but his torso thrashed violently around, only to be followed with a slight delay by the rest of his body. And then he's off, sprinting like a goddamn cheetah towards the brush. so I was pretty sure I'd pissed a little, but I wasn't willing to let that on. With as calm a voice as I could muster, I turned to the rest of my shit-scared crew and half-heartedly speculated that he was likely afraid of us and was warning us not to follow him. They agreed, though none did so truthfully. We move off, a little faster than before, making our way back the way we came. Hours pass, and our squads manage no more than some shitty mutterings over the comms. As the sun starts to set, the first and only clear voice cuts through the comms. It's our officers, and they're pissed at the fact only 2 squads manage to link up. They spoon-feed us directions until we find our way back to a dirt track, where a jeep eventually rolls up to take us back to base. I'm just glad to be back in a fortified area, but it wasn't long before the fear managed to find me there as well. By now, 3 squads had made it back, but no sign of the 4th. People panic immediately, but our officers keep their shit together and tell us it was likely they lost their comms. Teams would be assembled, people who actually knew what they were doing this time, and the squad would be found. We were encouraged not to worry and to get some sleep. I figure I'll probably do this in updates given the drawn-out nature of it. Long story short, they found the squad members, but not in one piece.